Okay, hello. It's week 5 of Attraction Equation. Today we're going to talk about how to sell in your stories without being salesy. So I have a lot of information. I will say with this week, I always struggle to update the slides because I mostly just want to talk to you and pull my phone up and give you details. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of all of that because I feel like I learn best by seeing examples. So I always like to pull my phone up and actually show you some stories. And then I have some stuff in the slides as well. But let's start by doing a little refresher. Where is my, is that what it is? I'm having some internet struggles, I think. I'm not really sure what's going on here. Okay. Nope, that is not the screen I want to show. Let's try this one more time. Okay, internet work. Let's work. There we go. Okay. So week 5, selling in your stories without being salesy. This is a big one. And I will just start by saying that I get the question a lot. Should I post in my feed or should I post in my stories? And my answer is always yes. So before we jump into how important your stories are for growing your sales and the trust that your audience has in you and what you have to offer, let's review what we talked about last week just a little bit. So these are the types of static feed posts that we talked about last week. And I want to remind you that your static feed posts, and again, those are the ones that you could find anytime on your, if somebody lands on your profile and they're scrolling, they could find those. So they're your static feed posts. They're for growing your brand authority, brand awareness. They're for helping your audience see the value you offer. They are that you can use static feed post to allow your audience to get to know you better. They are educational, informative, and they drive traffic to your page so that you can get the new followers that you're looking for. Although you will post about your offers from time to time in your static feed post, like your specific offers, the reality is that most people aren't ready to make a purchase just from your static feed posts. And this is especially true if you're a service-based business or you have a higher priced product selection. It's just going to take more time, more touches, more information, more trust. So once your audience starts to feel connected to you, they're going to start watching your stories. And when they're watching your stories, you have this incredible opportunity to invest in the connection that they're already feeling to you. So this is why sales happen in your stories, because once your ideal client has seen the value you offer in your posts and they start to watch your stories, they're intrigued and interested and ready to take a next step by working with you or purchasing from you. So again, a lot of my clients will ask me, should I post in my stories or in my feed? And the answer is always yes, you need to do both. So again, last week we talked in more depth about those different content formats that reels, carousels, infographics, still images, lives. But today we're going to dive into stories and how you can use that part of Instagram to really ramp up your sales with the folks that are ready to purchase from you. Okay, so stories. Stories are for nurturing and selling. This is just the reality of stories happen. Sales happen in your stories because generally speaking, the only people who are watching your stories are the people who already follow you and feel connected to you or intrigued by what you have to offer. It's a small percentage of your followers are watching your stories. So this is where those stronger connections are made. You are building on the trust factor and the sales are going to happen. The people that are watching your stories already have a level of understanding of the value you have to offer. So you want to use your stories as a way to talk directly to your audience who's watching, like they're your best friend. Like you want to think of your stories as an opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with each person. And I have a few tips to share about that. I'll come back to it. But this is really where, and some of this I've already said, again, like doing the slides for this one is hard because I just want to like take you into the stories. But this is where you take the relationships that you've already established with those static feed posts and you turn it into trust and then sales. Again, by talking to your audience like a friend, like a bestie, like you're having a conversation. And I'm gonna give you some guidance on what that looks like. You should also be active in your stories daily, even if you aren't posting daily. So even if you're not posting to your static feed every single day, it is advantageous if you actually want to grow your business and your income and your followers and your reach, that you're active in your stories on a daily basis. These are some quick recommendations of what to post, but I'm going to walk you through in more detail. But I want you to start to think about what conversations would you be having with a best friend? And that's what you're going to talk about in your stories. So more likely than not, if you're chatting with a best friend, you're going to ask for recommendations. You're going to give recommendations. You talk about this and that and the other thing. You talk about what's going on behind the scenes in your house and in your business and at your job, right? So like you want to have similar conversations in your stories. So Amy asked, would you also post over the weekends? You don't have to. I don't think it's necessary to post 7 days a week all the time. But I do think you can use stories, especially on the weekends, if you're somebody who is still in the business mode of like Monday through Friday is when I really work and then I take weekends like off. You can use stories as a way to show people who you are when you're not working. So you can show, here's the adventure I went on, and then use a question box or a poll box that's like, do you do weekend adventures? Do you take the weekend off? So you can use it on the weekends to your advantage to create that deeper connection. I'll say, it's been a few weeks now, but I went on, a 4-day camping, backpacking adventure. And we randomly had service at the top of this mountain in the middle of the backcountry. All of our phones were like, ding. We were like, what? We have service? So I posted one story of me, like just a picture of me at the top of this mountain. And it had over 150 views, which is like a higher regular viewpoint than what I normally get. And there was so much engagement. People were sending me messages, which I didn't get until a few days later when we got back into service, but it created a lot of conversation opportunities. So I think you can use the weekends as a way to show what's happening in real life for you, but you don't have to, because you also have to evaluate your connection to Instagram, to social media, to your mental health. So, and by that, I mean, if using social media on the weekends feels depleting to you, then don't post any stories on the weekends. You don't have to post content, but also keep in mind what that consistency of showing up can do for you if it's something you have the capacity for. So there's my roundabout answer to that question. Okay, so I want to come back to and remind you, this is something I talked about last week, but it's also important for your stories. Whenever you're like, I don't know what the hell to post about in your static feed or in your stories, you can always come back to this list as well. What can I do that's entertaining? What could be informative? And informative, especially when we're talking about stories, doesn't necessarily have to be informative about your business. It certainly can be, but it could just be informative about some other aspect of your life or something that you're doing, giving people a sneak peek of, something else that's happening behind the scenes in your world. Inspirational, something that creates connection, educational, interactive. These can all be ideas that you can incorporate into your stories. Okay. So I want to walk you through, and then I'm going to share my screen, my phone screen here in a minute. So some things to keep in mind when we're talking about your stories. Actually, let me just plug my phone in now. So any initial questions at the moment, feel free to throw them into the chat. Let me get myself set up here. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Screen. Okay. On screen. I'm just getting myself set up so I can see my notes, because if I don't, I will ramble on. All right. So here's some things to keep in mind when it comes to your stories. Every time you post a new story, your story bubble pops back to the front for the people that have been watching your stories. Okay. So Paul Russell, my friend Marissa, Jackie Richards, I look at their stories regularly. So when they post a new story, it pops right back to the front. After I click on and watch their story bubble disappears from the front. Okay. This is the algorithm working. So basically, every time you post a story, you're going to pop back to the front. So strategically, you do not want to post all of the stories you want to post for the day at one time. You want to spread them out throughout the day so that your story bubble is popping back to the front at different times throughout the day. Now, if I just take my thumb and I scroll over through all the stories, you're going to start to see everyone that I follow, but they're way further down the line because I don't see their content regularly and I don't interact with their stories regularly. So even though they show up here, they're way far down the line. And I'll come back to that in a second. Well, actually, let me come to that now. So a quick hack tip that you can start to incorporate so that maybe the people that are following you that don't see your story bubble currently popping up to the front is you should be going live at least once a week, because when you go live, your story bubble pops up to the front for anyone who follows you, whether they've looked at your story in a while or not. So you've opened Instagram before and there's a bubble here and it's got a little indication right here at the bottom of the bubble that says live. So when you go live, your story bubble pops all the way to the front for anyone who is following you, whether they have looked at your story recently or not. And maybe there's somebody, maybe they go live and it pops up when you log in and you're like, oh my God, I forgot I followed that person. What are they going live about? They'll click on your bubble. And now that they've clicked on the story bubble to see the live that you're doing, it tells the algorithm to prioritize your stories the next time. So now your story bubble is more likely to show up at the front, even if they haven't looked at it in a while. They clicked on your live, they checked it out, they're more likely to see your stories there forward. Excuse me. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind is you don't want to have too many story bubbles on a daily basis. So by this, I mean, up here at the top, it shows you how many stories are currently in your 24-hour queue, basically. I will tell you, for me personally, if I click on someone and there's like a whole bunch of tiny little dashes up here, I don't have time to go through all their stories like that. And what if in the middle, there's some really great information about an offer they have? I mean, I'm just going to miss it because if there are a lot of tiny hashes, I'm just swiping to the next person's story. I don't have time for that. I mean, this is not a cut on anyone who's doing that, but for business purposes, you don't want to have so many stories in a 24-hour period that it is deterring people from watching your stories. Okay. So you want your stories to be engaging and exciting for your audience. You want people to be like, ooh, what is so-and-so going, like, what are they sharing in their stories today? You don't want to drone on and on about any particular thing in your story. So again, I'm just using myself as an example here, but let's do this, for example. Last night I went to see the Barbie movie. So this was like not even a minute long, right? It was like 30 seconds of me just saying, I'm going to see the Barbie movie. Have you seen it? If so, tell me what you thought about it. It's engaging, it's current, right? So, and I got a lot of people sending me DMs about what they thought about the Barbie movie, read this article, but I didn't drone on and on. I wasn't like, hey guys, how's it going? How was your day? No, that's not necessary in your stories because people can't respond. So you just want to get on your stories right away and start talking. You just open the story and you say, I'm going to the Barbie movie tonight. I'm really excited. I've heard a lot about it. Have you seen it? It's like I'm having a one-on-one conversation with the person on the other side of the screen, not have you all seen it? You know, have you seen it? What did you think about it? It's like a one-on-one conversation with the person on the other side of the screen. And then you're done. You can add an engagement sticker if you want, a poll, a question box. I didn't do any of that. And I got a lot of people just sending me messages. Okay. So, again, short, this is more of a, like, how can I create connection with folks? I work out every morning. It's part of my mental health. It's just part of my mental health journey, my physical journey. So I always like to give a sneak peek into what I'm doing that day for physical activity. I like to add a song to it. Sometimes I will tag the instructor or Peloton. I always get a lot of great feedback from this. This one is me sharing a post. So this is a post that I put up today, a reel that I created and shared today. And my encouragement in your stories is that you always give some sort of context or engagement that gives context to the reel or the carousel or whatever your post is that you're sharing into your stories. Because if there's no context, people don't care. They're just going to scroll right on by, not necessarily click on it. So of course you can see here what the post is about, but then I like to add in a little bit of engagement. You know, do you post in your feed and your stories already? And then give some answers. The poll sticker is much easier to engage with in your stories than the question box. So the question box is a great option, but it takes a bit more thought for someone to respond to it. So be strategic with your poll engagement stickers and your question boxes. I have a lot of great responses from this one yesterday that I'm going to share and have more conversation about today in my stories. Also, yesterday I went to the chiropractor. I tagged the chiropractor, or I guess I did a location tag for them. They always reshare it when I do this, which is great because then my story shows up in their stories, and who knows who might navigate to my page from them having shared and me having tagged them. This, I shared results from, this is just purely for fun and engagement, okay? It's something that people, so I mentioned, like, you want your stories to be engaging and exciting for your audience. This is really fun. This has been really fun. I love 90s grunge music, alternative grunge rock music. And so I don't know, a month or so ago, I started like saying, you know, which song did you like best from the 90s? And it has kind of led and evolved into people messaging me and being like, when are you going to post another poll? Like, who's it? What bands or what songs or what artists is it going to be today? This has been really fun and has created a lot of conversation in the DMs. Now, is it about business? No. Is it necessarily leading to sales? Like, is this post leading to sales? No, but it's starting conversation in the DMs with people that I haven't talked to in the DMs or in real life in a long time, both related to business and not, which is great because when people are interacting with your stories and sending you DMs and having back and forth conversation, that tells the algorithm that you have engaging content that people want to see. So again, they're more likely to bump your story bubble up when you are posting stories. Okay. So a quick hack here when you're creating a story. So let's go to create a story. So you say you want to record yourself speaking to the camera. You can come to this little arrow right here and then choose the hands-free option. Now, if you're going to do a hands-free option here, and then, so all you have to do when you choose this hands-free option is, the heck is that? Tap the button right there in the middle, the start button, right? And then you can talk, and it's giving you a countdown around there. See the countdown happening? If you have something to say that's going to take more than 2 story slides, so that would be each of these story slides is 60 seconds. So if you're blah, 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 blahing all the way until the end, and then you feel like you want to do another one, that's fine. 2 slides that are about 60 seconds long is like kind of pushing the limit of people's, of like your audience's attention span. If you are in your stories talking for more than 2 slides worth, you need to get out of your stories and either go do a live about that topic or a post, or just cut it down to the bare minimum of information you can get out in your stories. Okay. There's nothing wrong with having detailed conversation in your stories about what you're talking about, but people aren't going to watch it if it's too long. So figure out how to say it quickly, put an engagement sticker to get more information, or to ask them, you know, what other information they want about the topic, move on. If it is too long, they won't watch it. And when people swipe away from your story, so when they like swipe away, it tells the algorithm that what you're offering is not that engaging. Okay, so keep it simple, engaging, entertaining. All right. So another tip here, you should be talking about or sharing info about your offer or a lead magnet daily in a variety of ways. Okay, so what do I mean by this? So let's go and just look currently, where is it? All right, so this is my current special offer that I have going on. So I'm really promoting this because it's only until the end of this week. So I am going to share this to my stories. So I hit the paper airplane, and then I'm going to hit add to story. I want to add a link. So I clicked on the square smiley face and then click on link. And then I'm going to customize the sticker to say 50% off until Friday. And an emoji or something. Now, I highly recommend that you always add sticker text and not just have the URL show up. Well, that is not the right URL that I want. Let's try that again. There we go. I highly encourage you to put the URL in and then have sticker text, because if the link box just shows your URL, there's nothing wrong with that, but give it some context. 50% off until Friday. Now I'm going to click done. And now I have a link ready to go. I want to kind of differentiate this background. So I'm going to come up here to the 3 dots. I'm going to click on draw. I'm going to then click on the pencil, the pen down here, and I'm going to pick a color from inside my image here. And then I'm just going to long hold my thumb on the screen until it turns the whole background that color. So I'm going to move this up a little. I'm going to leave this link right here near the bottom, because if somebody is scrolling, their thumb is right around in here, they can still click on this. But I go to the square smiley face. I'm going to click on arrow. And I'm just going to pick. All right, simple. Now I'm just going to hit your stories, and now I just share to my stories. So now there is a post in my stories for the day about a current offer. Now, other ways that you could do this, you don't just have to share the post. You could share an image, you could give more details to it. You could talk about it in your stories briefly. I also went live yesterday and shared about this offer, so I could share this again, and I could maybe put text over it to say, if you want to learn more about this incredible bundle and the savings you get, watch this quick overview. I could do the same thing with the post itself. If I wanted to share this again to my stories, I could put a text block that says, if you want to learn more about the details that are in here, click on the link below. There's lots of ways you can share about your offer, a freebie that you have, a lead magnet in your stories. So what do I have here? So I'm going to pull this from my highlights just so you can see. This is how I have shared about lead magnets previously in my stories, right? Attention, business owners and entrepreneurs growing on Instagram. Here's what it is. Here's where you get it. Free, right? Like make free Instagram checklist to boost engagement. Get yours here. Those were things that were shared to my stories. Okay. So Amy asked, would you just share one sort of offer a day? Yes. Now, yes, and also it depends. So if you're promoting a special that like this one that I have is a limited time offer, it's only for this week. So I'm going to share about it every day in my stories. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to have more posts about a specific offer than I normally would, because again, it's only for a few days. If you have something that you're launching that maybe isn't, and you're launching it right now, but it doesn't start for a month from now, yes, you could talk about that in your stories. The next day you could share a lead magnet, because you also want to keep in mind that not everyone that's watching your stories has necessarily received a freebie from you and is on your email list. So sharing in your stories about the lead magnets that you have to offer that are free to them, like, doesn't require any currency, any money exchange yet, is a great way to get them onto your email list so they can learn more about the offer that you have because you should also be doing sales emails when you're running a special or running a sales sequence of some kind. But I do think it's really important to share something that you're offering every day in your stories, whether it is a lead magnet freebie offer or a paid offer, sharing a testimonial, something about what it's like to work with you, how they can work with you, what you have available currently. Okay. I already mentioned the engagement stickers, but let me take you back in and show you. So when you're going in to create a story, so no, not a picture. That's not what I wanted. Okay. Let's say you're going to create a story, a quick hands-free something. You're talking about something important. So whatever it is, you're talking about it, you're giving some context, you're asking for feedback. What do you think? Can you tell me what is your favorite XYZ? Okay. You're going to hit done. The first thing you'll do is add captions. Always add the auto-generated captions. Move them. Again, you have these border lines. Don't go beyond the border lines. All right. And then say you want to add an engagement poll or sticker. Square, smiley face. There are a few options in here, but the two that work best are the question box and the poll box, not the quiz, the poll. Okay. You can use this one, the slide bar or the reaction. There's nothing wrong with those, but it doesn't really give you the type of like value rich content to have maybe or start conversations. So I more often than not use the poll sticker just because it's easier to interact with. The question box is great if you're asking for something specific, but people are less likely to respond to the question box as opposed to the poll. So let's say you're going to do a poll and you want to say, do you prefer X, Y, or Z, whatever the things are. And then it can be X, what the heck is happening here? X, Y, Z. You can change the color of this part of the poll box just by clicking on the color wheel up here. I like to use this purple color. And then I just use my fingers to move it around on the screen. Again, keep it within the border lines and preferably the lower right-hand corner, because most people's thumb is already there. So it's easier to interact with. Now, as people respond to this, you will have access to see what their response was. So first of all, with a question box, all you do is swipe up, and then you will see any responses showing up here. So like, here are the responses from this question box. I can scroll over and see them. If I want to see them all, I can click on see all. You can always screenshot this and share it. You can reply to each one individually and share it as a response. And that it doesn't show their name. You know, you could move it around on the screen. You could video yourself verbally responding to it. You could like have a picture of yourself and then put a text box to respond to it. You can respond in whatever way you want. But people love seeing, especially if they took the time to respond in a question box, they love seeing your response to it on the screen. And maybe you even tag them if that feels appropriate. The other thing you can do, let me go into so if you've ever, so I'm going up here to the hamburger, and then I'm going to go to archive. All right, so here's the one I did yesterday about the bands, the artists. So I can swipe up and I can see here who voted. It tells me who they voted for, or I could click on the actual. So if I click on the actual bar right here, I'm like, ooh, who are the 9 that voted? Here they are. Then you could send them an individual message. You could click right here and be like, oh my gosh, Dave Matthews, really better than Jack Johnson? It just starts conversation. They interacted with your poll. It just starts conversation. It's not about business, but it is engaging. It's entertaining. It's fun. You're just being silly. Like, oh my gosh, tell me, why do you like Dave Matthews more than Jack Johnson, right? Like, just have conversation with these folks. And especially if they're responding to something that's business related, like if you ask a question, you know, are you doing this thing that will help you grow your business? Or are you doing this thing that will help with whatever the outcome is that you give your clients? And they say no. Say your options are yes and no. And they say no. You could always respond to them and say, hey, thanks so much for this feedback. What is it that keeps you from doing the thing that I asked about? Do you have any like hurdles or roadblocks? You're not like forcing them to learn about what you offer. You're just asking them a question to get more feedback. Okay. All right. Let me double check. Oh, let me come back. Let me pull this back up. Hold on. So some prompts that you can start to offer. I already mentioned this, but let's round back to it. Ask for recommendations, offer recommendations, talk about the mundane of your life, share a series that's interactive. So for me, that series has been the songs, the artists, right? Like that's been really fun. People really enjoy that. They're like, hey, there was when my Instagram account went down a few weeks ago and it was disabled, 2 or 3 people found me on Facebook and they were like, oh my gosh, I couldn't find you. I was looking for you so that I could engage on, you know, so I could vote on your poll for the day and I couldn't find you. Did your Instagram go down? So like, that's fun. They were like, they were looking for me, wondering where I was. And they even went so far as to find me on Facebook because they were looking to engage in that poll. Show a behind the scenes clip of life and or business. Show your face. Let us hear your voice. It could be about anything. Talk to the camera like you're talking to one person. So again, when you start a story, you don't need to say, hey, hello, how are you? How's today going? How is everyone? Because they can't respond and it's just taking up time. So when you start the story, start with what you're going to talk about. And you don't need to say things like, I'm coming on here to talk to you about blah, blah, blah. Just start talking about it, because people's attention spans are like this short. So keep that in mind when you're creating your stories, as well as your content that goes in your static feed posts, but especially your stories. Just get on and start talking. So when I did the one about Barbie last night, I wasn't like, hi, hello, guess what I'm doing tonight? I just said, I'm going to see Barbie tonight. I want to know if you've seen it. Tell me what you thought in the comments. I can't wait. I'm going with girlfriends, right? Like quick to the point. You'll get better at this as you go, because right now you might be like, oh my God, I can't think that fast. So think it through ahead of time, or you could there are some apps that will give you like a teleprompter, a scroller while you are videoing it, like on your phone and videoing it. So you can put exactly what you want to say in there without the ums and the ahs and the extra addition of stuff. I already mentioned this, but keep your talking stories to no more than 2 60-second slides. Again, people's attention spans are short. It's not that what you're saying doesn't have value, but if it's going to be longer than those 2 60-second slides, you should either go live and talk about it, or just condense it down and create a post about it. Share about your values. Share something funny. It's always great to find a post, a reel, a carousel, something, a meme that somebody else's account shared that you think is hilarious. Share it and then ask people, do you find this as funny as I do? Like, get engagement going. Share your offers. I already mentioned that, whether they are your free lead magnet offers or the paid offers. Share stories that made you laugh in your day-to-day life. So again, sharing something funny, or maybe you are speaking into the camera, talking about something that actually happened in your life that was hilarious. And always keeping in mind topics that are interactive and that people want to respond to. This is really important because you want to have engagement happening in your stories. Okay. So again, I just took a few screenshots of this series I've been doing. So after the end of the 24-hour period, when the voting is done, I will share it. I'll say, here were yesterday's results. This always also creates a lot of engagement. People are like, oh my God, I can't believe NSYNC won. What the heck? Backstreet Boys were better. It's just fun engagement. So like, think of something like this that you could do. This was easy for me because I love music from the 90s. So it's been easy for me to like find songs and artists. So like, what's something that you love that you could share that people would want to engage with? Now, it's been funny sharing this since I'm almost 40, right? And a lot of people that are following me were like born in the 90s or the 2000s. So it's also been fun to have conversations with people that are like, I don't even know these bands. These are the bands my parents listened to. And it just creates fun conversation. So keep those things in mind. All right. I wanted to leave ample time for questions, but I also want to tell you that in your workbook, which I have not uploaded yet, I will be uploading it as soon as we're done to the portal. There is a 5-day stories that sell template, which is a freebie that I have right now, but I'm using that template as your workbook for the week. It literally walks you through what to post in your stories for 5 days in a row. And then you can start to use those ideas on repeat in other ways. So your homework is to start posting in your stories, to use that 5-day stories that sell template, to start posting in your stories this week, and to then start to create a routine of what's going to happen in your stories. Okay. Let's do any questions. So again, I just feel like I actually turned this section about stories into its own week, because in the previous times I've offered this, I would do your static feed posts and your stories all in one week. And there was never enough time for conversation about it. And I couldn't go into as much detail. So I know that this week is a little bit shorter as far as teaching content, but are there any questions about stories currently from what we've talked about today? Okay, if there's not.
Can I say one thing?
Of course.
So, you talked about the question and the polls. Would you say just to do like one poll a day or one question a day instead of like using it too much? And is there any other sort of like interactive things that work as well as those, or is it just those that work the best out of everything?
I wouldn't have, so the suggestion that I heard probably 3 months ago from Brock and Shalene Johnson was that 50% of your stories should have some sort of engagement option on it.
Okay.
So like every other story, basically. Whether that's a poll or a question box or that little like slider that you can do, that's up to you. I do think at least one of your engagement options a day should be a question box or a poll. And then if you want to use, like, say you share something funny, say you share like a funny reel, you could maybe just use the slider bar engagement sticker with like, a laughing face. That's great. That's awesome. That's engagement. But really the poll and the question box are the two best to use for for feedback that you can respond well to. Like if somebody responds with that slider bar, that's great. They laughed at it or whatever. They did the 100%. It's not like a great option for responding and creating conversation in the DMs, but that's okay. You can have that there as well. So I think using a mixture is fine. Knowing that the question box and the poll option are the best is good for you to know, but use the other ones if they're fun and you want to use them, of course. And then just know to, keep at least one with a question box or a poll every 24 hours.
And if you do a question box and say you use the question box and you say that you should, I know like you said in advance, like 4 to 6 stories a day, so your maximum style. Would you say if you know you're going to probably get responses from your questions, would you just do it where that day you just do purely questions so you don't then like end up with like 50, well that's quite an exaggerate, like 10 responses?
I mean, I think it depends on what the question is.
Okay.
If it's like a question box about something fun, you could wait until you have all the responses and then share a screenshot of like all the responses at once. If it's like a more detailed question box, like say you do a question box that says, tell me your questions about this offer that I have. You could wait and do those one by one as they come in, or you could do them one by one after it's all done. It kind of just depends. And this is a great, thank you for asking this question because it reminds me, I forgot one hack to share with you when it comes to your question box. Okay, let me share my screen again. Does that answer your question, Amy? Was that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Okay, so let's say you have a question box like this one and nobody types anything in, which is fine. You can type your own questions in. So you just tap on there and type your own questions in, especially for something like this, like Instagram Growth Accelerator bundle questions. So I could type my own questions in like, just started my IG. Is this a good option for me? Send. Maybe I could say, what's something else somebody would ask me? How long would I have access to the bundle? Right? So like think of the questions that like, people would ask, and then you can respond to them, share the response. Nobody can see who asked the question. You don't have to be like, I put this question in here. This is me. But it gives you the option. Now you have the opportunity to respond to this question that will give your audience who's watching your stories more context about an offer that you have. And while you're answering, you could like do the hands-free option. You could record yourself. You could answer this question. Then you could put the link underneath it. And while you're talking, you could be like, you can click right here and learn more about what's actually in the bundle, blah, blah, blah. So for those kinds of question boxes, I highly encourage you to put your own questions in there especially if it's something about an offer that you have. And then like this one, I'm going to respond to each of these individually today because I have a lot to say about each of these. Like, what's a comment that really rubs you the wrong way? Everything happens for a reason. Girl, I feel that. So I'm going to like go on a little soapbox in my stories about it and create some serious engagement. Okay. Tiny soapbox. Yes. Well, okay. So Amy said she's done this too many times and it makes her not trust the other question boxes, which I love. And let me just say, it's just a way to use the tool to answer the questions that people might have that they don't know how to ask, or they maybe aren't going to take the time to ask. It's a different way of using content to inform them. So yes, I mean, you might now look at other creators' accounts and be like, did anyone actually ask that question? Or did they assume someone would ask that question and they asked it themselves? But really, it is a great opportunity for you to basically answer FAQs in a way that feels interactive to your audience. So yeah, it can feel like, oh, this feels sneaky. And that's okay if it feels sneaky. It's also it's a great opportunity to get more information out there to your more intrigued audience who's watching your stories. So thank you for that honesty, Amy. I love it. All right. Any other questions in the moment? I'm sure questions will come up as you start, like as you read through the workbook with the stories that sell template, reach out and ask questions. Ask any questions in the portal, email me if you have questions. The other thing I'll say, as I think I say this every week, I hope I am, don't overthink it. Take the information you learned today and start implementing it. The only way you'll get better at using stories and engaging with your audience there is if you start using stories to engage with your audience there. The only way you will ever start to get answers on your question boxes or to your polls is if you start showing up and your story bubble starts to actually show up for your viewers. If you start going live at least once a week, which we talked about last week. So your story bubble starts to pop up on a regular basis for the people who aren't seeing your stories, and now they will. The only way any of this works is if you put it into action. So don't overthink it and know that it will be messy and feel overwhelming and cumbersome at first. And then at some point you'll be like, this is like back of my pocket. I like know what I'm doing. I don't really know when that happens, but it will. I mean, I know I have felt that way as well. I'll have moments of maybe I show someone like, oh, this is how I do this in my stories to get this to work. And they're like, holy shit, that is the best hack I've ever seen. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I guess it is a hack. I forgot. I've just been using that tactic or that tool or doing it that way for 6 months now. So it doesn't seem like a new idea. But for some people, like I shared a reel the other day about how to take a picture, snapshot of your brand colors, save it in your camera roll, and then use it to like change the background color for a story. And I can't tell you how many people were like, oh my God, this is incredible, which it is. And I just forgot that most people don't know that. And you'll get to that same place once you start implementing the things we're talking about, but you have to start from where you are. Okay. Hit me up with any questions. I'm going to go right now into the portal and upload the workbook. So you can download that here in the next 10 minutes if you're on live. And I will have this recording out to you within the next hour or so. It takes some time for it to finish uploading, and then I have to download it and then upload it again. So I will have it out to you. And then next week, what are we doing next week? Let me remind myself. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to use Canva to create graphics, to create content, to create things that you can use in Instagram, in emails. I love playing in Canva. So that will be next week. If you are using Canva already, spend some time playing around with Canva this week, just to kind of get familiarized with some of the stuff in there. And if you have a Canva Pro account, take some time to look at the brand hub if you haven't already. You don't necessarily have to get everything uploaded into there if that feels too overwhelming, because we'll talk about that next week, but at least play around in there a little bit. So that when I open it up, you're not like, oh my God, this is a foreign land. What is this? At least familiarize yourself. Okay. Thank you for being here. Reach out with any questions. I will go dump the workbook into the portal right now, and I will see you next week.